Very happy to start this new video series on my channel called Mixdown Q&A. Hey, what's going on, my friend? Chris here from Mixdown Online, and welcome to this edition of Mixdown Q&A. So let's start with question number 1. I'm kind of confused on gain, staging, and compressor settings. If you set the compressor on a certain track, the compression level changes when you change the pre-gain level. Yes, this is normal because pre-gain comes before the signal reaches the EQ, fader, and effects section of the channel. So if you gain stage after mixing or during mixing, you're going to get into this kind of problem because the signal coming into your compressor is not going to be the same if you bring down the pre-gain level. So at this point, why do you want to gain stage? Is it because your master bus is peaking, or is it because your channel, the channel itself, is peaking after you added all of those plugins? But if it was peaking before hitting the plugins, now you need to gain stage before. So you need to use the pre-gain to gain stage your signal down. In that case, you will have to readjust your compressor settings or saturation settings, reverb, delay, and stuff like that. EQ doesn't matter because EQ is not affected by the amount of signal coming into the plugin, but by the signal itself. So that is not going to be a problem. But if your concern is that you're peaking after the signal goes through all the plugins, what you can do is only to add a gain plugin that you can find for free on the web, or use just a stock EQ plugin that has an output level knob and just bring down the output of that last plugin in your chain, and that will gain stage the signal coming out of your channel. So this way your master bus is not gonna peak. All right, so this is things you need to check on your side to see if you really need to gain stage before your signal hits the channels or after. Okay, so it depends. So check it out. I hope that helps. What is your peak level for drums? I saw your video about gain staging and you said that between -18 to -15 dB FS is good. But what about drums with all the transients? When it comes to recording, whether I'm recording drums or vocals or guitars, I tend to stay in the -18 to -12, 10 dBFS for peaks. So this way I don't need to gain stage back in my session before mixing. But if for any reason my signal gets recorded a bit hotter than what I'm used to, it doesn't matter much as far as I don't go over 0 dBFS. That is the reality in the digital world. In this case, I will gain stage afterwards. And now when I say between -18 and -15 dBFS, it's an average. So even if you record a bit too hot, it doesn't matter much. Like I said, as far as you don't go past 0 dBFS. So by aiming a -18 to -12, -10, it gives you a buffer zone, okay, to not peak, okay, which is what's important. Now back in your DAW, when it's going to be time for you to mix, of course part of the signal might peak to -10, -8, -6. If that is the case, you can bring everything down and keep that average between -18 to -12 dBFS, and the rest is going to be taken care of with compression that will reduce the dynamic range afterward. I can usually get a mix to sound good in my room. It is getting it to translate well on other platforms that is a mystery to me. Okay, yeah, that's a good question, and that is the problem for a lot of people. Now, there's a lot to cover on this. Now, I made a video a couple of years ago about this specific topic. I'm going to leave the link on top and in the description down below. I encourage you to go and watch it. But what I can tell you right away, if your mix sounds good in your room, and when you get outside your room, your mix is falling apart, that means that your room might be the problem. Okay, so what you can do here is to make sure that you have at least a minimum of acoustic treatment in your room to control all the reflections and the behavior of your room. And you're going to need to get to know your room, to know the sound of the room when mixing. And To achieve that, once you have some acoustic treatment, at least a minimum of treatment, you're gonna have to reference a lot of music. So listen to whatever you listen outside of the studio, bring that into your studio and start to listen to that music in your room, so you'll have a good reference point afterwards. And something else that you can also do once you have some acoustic treatment in your room is to get a system like SonarWorks Reference 4, which is amazing, and that will kind of fine-tune your speakers within your room. Okay, I actually made a video on this. I'm gonna leave the link on top and in the description down below. And also play with the position of your speakers, and I actually talk about that in the video I was telling you about earlier. So this is again very, very important, because most of us are mixing in a rectangle shaped room, and that usually causes a lot of problems with reflections and stuff like that. So there's a way you can position your speakers so you get the best out of your listening position. So again, there's a very cool video that just came out by Justin from Sonic Scoop that I'm gonna encourage you to go and watch. I'm gonna leave the link down below, and it's all about speaker placement in your room, okay? And that honestly helps a lot. So these tips can definitely help you out and be a very good starting point, and you can build up from that point on. Can I use mix bus compression in EQ if I'm exporting stems for mastering? Will the compressor sound different since each stem hits the compressor individually? Yes, it will sound differently. Now, for those who don't know about stem mastering, the technique is very simple. Instead of sending like a stereo mix to a mastering engineer, you send stems, which are usually a stereo version of each instrument group. So in your session, you would have one stereo bus for the drums, one for the bass, one for the guitars, another one for the synths, and another one for the vocals. And you bounce that as stereo files, and you send all of these to mastering. So this is stem mastering. So in this case, the mastering engineer does the mastering with all of those stereo tracks instead of only one stereo file. Okay, so this is stem mastering. So now to get to the question, now if you insert some processing on the master bus where all of those stems are going into, especially for compression, this will definitely affect the signal coming into the compressor, and the compressor will behave differently since he's not gonna get the same signal. Okay, so this is a bit normal. So this is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of stem mastering or sending stems to the mastering engineer instead of a stereo file. So if you started your mix with a compressor on your mix bus, so you basically mixed in compression, chances are that your mix will fall apart. So you need to plan that before you start mixing. So if you're planning ahead and you know that you're gonna send that mix as stems to a mastering engineer, I would suggest you not to add compression on the mix bus, but instead just use compression on those instrument buses instead. And this way your mix is gonna stay the same. Now as far as EQ, it's a bit less dramatic for EQ, but for compression, for sure it is gonna make a difference. And if you added the compressor at the end of your mix, I would say remove the compressor and leave that to the mastering engineer to deal with compression on that master bus, you know, because he's gonna have to do that work anyways. So these are my suggestions. I hope that helps. All right, my friends, so this is gonna be it for today. If you have questions like these, you can leave everything down below or on the comment section of all of my videos. If you want to, I read all comments that comes in. And if I think that the question might help a lot of people, I will definitely make a video out of it. All right, my friends, until next time, take care and see you.